Ademar Adolphe Louis Martens, working under the pseudonym Michel De Ghelderode, was a Belgian dramatist and writer. Born in 1898 in the Ixelles municipality, Brussels, his folkish morality plays, according to Encyclopaedia Britannica, resound with violence, demonism, holy madness, and Rabelaisian humour. Writing about 80 plays in his lifetime, in 1927 his early play, Scenes from the Life of St. Francis of Assisi, garnered success, following up by his submitting upon the Flemish Popular Theatre's request a play entitled Barabbas to be played during Holy Week. Besides writing plays such as his farce The One Who Sold the Hanging Rope or Chronicles of Hell, Ghelderode also wrote puppet plays such as Duvelor or The Farce of the Old Devil or Our Devil Who Preached Wonders. Ghelderode is a proponent of what is termed total theatre, which, to quote the Britannica again, is drama in which every sort of appeal is made to the eye, the ear, and the emotions in order to stir the intellect. Ghelderode started writing plays in 1939, saying he wished to concentrate on prose, wishing to write more inward art. Following his single short story collection Spells, he wrote for Le Journal de Bruges between 1946 and 1953, and died in Schaerbeek in 1962, aged 63. Jean Cocteau said of Ghelderode that he, quote, is the black diamond that closes the necklace of poets that Belgium carries around her neck. This black diamond catches a cruel and noble fire. It wounds only the small soul. It dazzles others. In 1941, when Belgium was already occupied by Nazi Germany, he published Spells, his only collection of fantastic fiction, which would be edited and altered slightly in 1947 to drop a story deemed offensive due to its anti-Semitism and to add a story Ghelderode was left over with from his attempts to compile a second short story collection. Written between February of 1939 and April of 1940, the stories in Spells were written around the time when Ghelderode was suffering both from bouts of extreme ill health, such as that he feared his death being imminent, and the beginnings of a persecution complex. Roland Bayen speculates the stories were in fact written under the effects of opium. We shall be examining the Wakefield Press English translation, which includes both the controversial tale omitted from the 1947 definite edition of Spells, as well as the story left over from Ghelderode's second planned collection. The stories in this collection might disappoint someone who has read other Belgian fantasists like Jean Rey or Thomas Owen, in that the outright supernatural is sometimes marginal and oftentimes not present at all. Ghelderode often suffices to entice the reader with his bleak atmospheres, the horrible still life of an overgrown, neglected garden adjoining an ancient crumbling house, the keys to which no longer open some doors, leaving some rooms inaccessible, a mystery to the very end, even when the bulldozers come to demolish it all. The Public Scribe, the first story of the collection, gives us the tale of a man who takes a pleasure in visiting a private museum of wax dolls, and takes a particular liking to a wax figure in the form of a public scribe of a century prior, coming to tell it all his problems and woes. The Devil in London lacks a supernatural element at all, narrating a chance meeting with a man dressed as the devil, when the narrator's boredom makes him cry out for the devil, if for nothing else that can alleviate his boredom. The Sick Garden, the only story adorned with illustrations stemming from a separate illustrated publication, deals with a man who takes a room in an ancient crumbling house adjoining with an untamable, rancid, sickly garden patrolled by a hairless, deformed, leprous cat. The narrator and his dog live in the house until it is demolished, and witness the tragedy of the strange visitor who sneaks into the garden and who is beset upon repeatedly by the vicious cat. The Collector of Relics has a man torture an antique store owner by demanding a sacrilegious condition be fulfilled before he would deign to purchase a very expensive antique ciborium. Rotomago is the story of a man who finds and tortures a strange toy glass imp in a bottle sealed with parchment, which promises that the imp called Rotomago can foretell the future. Ghelderode seems to credit the origin of the imp to Les Admirables Secrets d'Albert de Grande, a 1703 expanded edition of the medieval grimoire, whose shortened title is Liber Secretorium Alberti Magni in the original Latin, and which appeared in Latin around 1493. Interestingly enough, the name Rotomago appears prior to the most well-known 1703 French expanded edition in Latin elsewhere. His name comes up in William Camden's Anglica Normannica Hibernica Cambrica e Veterbino Scripta from 1603, according to Via Libri, an early edition of Camden's scholarly presentations of important chronicles, these being Ace's biography of Alfred, Walsingham's English Chronicle, and his Epigramma. And specifically, the name appears in the part summarizing Thomas Walsingham's chronicle Epigramma Neustriae. However, both there and in Guglielmo Dondini's Historia de Rebus in Gallia Gestis of Alessandro Farnesio, there seems to refer to a place under this name. However, in French we do find him mentioned in another work, where he's also called infamous, that being the occult work Les Farfadets, published in 1821 by a certain Alexis Vincent Charros Berbiquer de Terreneuve de Tim, a man who saw devils everywhere, claimed an Avignonese physician to be the representative of Moloch, and said that during his stay in his Paris apartment in the Hotel Mazarin, demons never ceased to appear there. In addition to this story, we have references to a bottle imp, the idea of a supernaturally powerful devil inside of a bottle seemingly originating in Stevenson's The Bottle Imp from 1891, but I can find no record of any such devices for telling the future actually existing, and the imp in the Stevenson story seems to not be primarily focused on forecasting future events. Spells is an ambiguous tale. A man who enters a remote town wanders around during the carnival and is nearly drowned, but is rescued by mysterious masked beings. The story is very raw, and there are bodily fluids of all sorts mentioned at times. Just as a warning. Stealing from Death and Nuestra Senora de la Soledad are two short tales whose description would rob them of their whole charm, so I will skip them and instead focus on Fog, which shows us a man who receives an odd revelation after he flees to his home from the oppressive presence of the fog. Then we have Twilight, where a man is convinced that non-stop rain that is pestering the city must mean the imminent end of the world, and details his means to try and avert it. You Were Hanged presents a man's obsession with an ancient gibbet hook in Bruges, where petty criminals were hung over a century ago without ceremony, the reason for his entrancement with this plot being sort of obviously given away in the title. The Odour of Pine seems to be an early precursor of the central theme of Ingmar Bergman's The Seven Seals, specifically a chess match with what is assumed to be death, though the sickly narrator has no intention of playing fairly. And finally, Elia the Painter is a story which shows a man's persecution of a Jewish painter, and there are several sort of very anti-Semitic statements made by the narrator during the story. One was reminded a bit of similar material in John Ray's early work. As a story it works, though the narrator is not a pleasant sort to read about. Overall, it is a collection which focuses more on ghastly atmosphere than the outright supernatural, but it is nevertheless very good at its especially hideous atmosphere. And it is a pity that Ghelderode never wrote anything more in the field of the fantastic.